Welcome back to our Scala class, and today we will look at actually connecting to an SQLite database using our Scala program or Scala application. So we'll need to do some steps. We'll need to install a driver and of course write some code. Again, so we can utilize the knowledge we learned previously on the SQL syntax, how SQL works, and we'll use that to write some queries and actually get some data, feed some data into our application. So let's get started. So we'll need a driver. So let's notice, or let's go to our dbeaver connection, right? When we open our database, right? If you make a new database connection like here, right? Let's say I do SQLite, do next, right? So there is actually a JDBC URL. So notice, right? So this prefix JDBC and SQLite, right? So JDBC is pretty much a standard way of the standard way of connecting to database used in a Java ecosystem, in Java virtual machine ecosystem, how we connect to databases, right? So it's extremely common. There are libraries written to be higher level, which you can write yourself, or you can use an existing library, but we'll start with this lowest level library, which connects to this to pretty much any database you need, right? Of course, the area it would change depending whether this is SQL Server, whether this is MySQL, MariaDB, or let's say, I don't know, some other SQL database or some other even non-SQL database, right? We could check actually what database it supports, but let's go and install a driver, right? So again, if you do a JDBC, right? If you do this, right, you could find what it is, right? It's an interface basically, right? So very right. So extremely stable, right? Very been around since 97 actually, and it's actually what's sitting underneath. So we are going to use a driver for this, right? So we need a driver for a particular database, and we'll go to our old friend Maven repository, right? And I'll type in JDBC and SQLite, right? So let's see what it offers, right? So there it is, SQLite JDBC, and that's exactly what we want. There's also some frameworks using Spring, but we're not going to handle that today, right? There are many other frameworks, there are other libraries, but we'll use the lowest level, the simplest one, again, which is enough to get started and actually do pretty much everything you need to do, right? As long as you know some SQL syntax. So let's go here, right? And let's see the version. There is a version, let's do the latest one, right? 3603, looks like quite a few users, August of 2021. Okay, let's try this one, right? I think, slightly, actually I think I did I'm using this already before. So let's check, right? So we have our link. Again, we can choose whichever build system we're using, but we are using, of course, the simple builds tool, right? SBT, and we have our little text that we need to enter, which basically we are adding a new entry to our library dependencies variable basically in our build SBT file. So let's go to our build SBT file. Where is it? It's in our main project. Here it is, right? Let's open up, right? So we have our upickle, we have our Scala XML module, and we'll add our JDBC. So again, if you're building a larger application, you could have multiple different libraries here. So let's see how it works. Again, of course, you obviously need an internet connection here in order to pull the library here, and then we can proceed. So load SBT changes, right? So structure has been changed, load changes to make it work correctly. Okay. And again, I think when it works, it's beautiful, right? Again, if something breaks, might be hard to find out what. I mean, maybe you have a wrong library version, maybe something didn't go correctly, but again, if you copy directly from the Maven repository, it should not present the problem. So let's see, and we are here. Look at this, external libraries, right? We have our Corretto 11, and we have our upickle, and we have our XML, and we have our SQLite JDBC, or JAR, or Java Archive. Okay, excellent. So we should be ready to go. Okay, I will close all XML files for now. We don't need those at the moment. And let's see if we can actually make a connection. So what do we need? Right, so we need an address, right? We need to know where in the world do we live, right? So, we'll go to source, So, and we know, of course, there's resource DB lives here, right? Chinook, we'll use Chinook still, right? I mean, you could use any other database, right? You just need the address. Again, for SQLite, it's enough to know the actual file location. If you were using some other databases, like, you know, a server-based database, you need to actually have a port number, a password, and a username. But the same idea would apply. Okay, so we have the address, right? I mean, of course, I could find the I could copy path reference, by the way. We'll do that in a moment, right? Cancel. But let's go to our source, right? Or main, right? And I'll do day 25, right? Then day 25, new Scala class, and day object, of course. Day 25. The DB connection, right? Okay. So DB connection, and let's run that. Extends app, add, extends app, right? Testing, you know, we can write print line, testing database connection. Oh, let's see. So what do we need? Right, so we'll need the address, right? So I can go to here and find it. Of course, I know it's resource, it's source resource DB Chinook, but let's see if you don't, again, if you're maybe not quite sure, right? You could do copy path reference, and you should find this one here, right? That's what we want from content root or repository root, actually, right? In this case, it's same, right? So repository root is what you probably want, right? So so DB, let's see, DB path. We'll do DB path would be something like this, right? Right, that's good, but that's not enough, right? We need also well, not a URI, or maybe URI, right? So we'll need an address, right? So again, how did they call this in the Beaver? Did they call it URL or URI? URL, Unified Universal Resource Locator. Again, so URL. Again, we'll call it URL. Let's do that, right? Again, so URL. So we need to type exactly like we did here, right? And again, let's do SQLite. Right, next again. So yeah, we need this. So we need this prefix basically, right? We need this little tiny prefix, right? So obviously we'll use our string interpolation, right? We'll do S, right? Okay, and of course now we can enter DB path, right? And we should be good, right? So we'll connect. So we can do print line. We'll connect to the following URL. Connect to SQLite database at the following URL. Again, of course, this file location, but again, it has this prefix, right? It has a prefix, and I think that should be enough for our for the well, of course we need to connect, but the URL should be correct. We don't need to add anything else. Let's see, is it running? Right. Okay. It's compiling. Slightly slow today, but okay. Yes, testing. Okay. Oh, and what happened here, because I didn't do S, right? Of course, so I'm not didn't have string interpolation set up. Okay, so yes, we have our URL. So JDBC and right, maybe of course, right. Okay, right. So this address here without the front, right? This is not needed, right? So address, right? So address, right? So of course location, of course URL address is sort of redundant, because location is also, you could think of an address. Okay, so we need a connection, so we'll need a driver. So I believe it's called driver manager. Let's see how it was called. We can check it also in our SQL. We can check our yeah, it's called driver manager. Again, this is a Java code, but it doesn't really matter, because again, remember, we can run any any Java code in our Scala applications, no problem, right? So this is of course library written a long time ago, started a long time ago before even Scala existed. So we need a connection, so let's call it connection. Why not connection? And I'll call it driver manager, right? Again on get connection on URL, right? Okay, that's easy. On actually in this case, I don't know, IntelliJ imported for me, right? I didn't have to then do it anything, but that's what you want to do. So Java SQL driver manager. Okay, so that's a standard way of connecting. So we'll have a connection, right? And we can get maybe some information. Let's see, print line, con get client info, right? Let's do that. See what we get, any information. Again, so how would I find? If I know this is what this is a connection, right? Connection type of object of connection type, so it has some methods, right? So if I do again even without I can get some methods. So get client info, right? Why not? So we'll see what's happening here. So this will be our big test. This will be our big test. See if we actually have a connection. If we have our URL correctly on null, right? Well, there's no client info, but I don't think there's any error, right? Let's see. So let's see if I can break it. Not Chinook, like I'll do not Chinook, right? I'll break it purposely. You should have an exception, right? And we'll talk about exception handling later on. Ah, it's also no, so that's not good. So that's not good because we don't know exactly we have a failure or not. We either connected or not, right? So that's not so good. Ah, looks like, well, if you have a non-existing path, that's fine. It's not an error, right? It's actually, so there's no errors in SQLite because there's no password, right? You just create a new database. Okay, so again, care should be taken to have the right address. So actually, it's kind of hard. I'm trying to see how could I get an exception. Oh, maybe let's do here, not SQLite. Let's do this, right? Right, let's see if we can break it. I want to break it first, right? This will be an exception, I hope. Yes, we finally get an exception. Exception, no suitable driver, because it doesn't find. There's no such technology as called not SQLite, right? So again, so you can get an exception, and we'll handle that a little bit later. So to do, I'll add it to do handle exceptions at connection type, right? Again, it's hard to get one, right? And with SQLite, that's why SQLite is so nice to work with, because it's pretty much, I mean, again, worst case scenario, you make a new database, right? But okay, so, all right, so now we didn't get any information, right, about client. If you had a more, I believe you had a more stronger database, you would have a, so to say, I mean, a bigger database, you know, you have a more meta information. You get some information about the client connection. Okay, but it works. Like, let's test again. Okay, right. Let's see about right, get connection, right? Again, so we will try cache afterward. That's of course we want to do it, and I will need, of course, close the connection at the end. But for now, right, we will want to, right, of course the connection closes also when we end. Connection will close after we handle after the application ends as well, right? But it'd be nicer to close it earlier. Similar idea how it's better to close it when we open a file, right? Because again, in this case, of course, database is actually resides on a file. So how do we make queries? Well, let's make a statement. So we need to have a statement. So we'll have statement, right? So statement, I'll call it statement equals connection, create statement, exactly, you see? Right, so this will be a sort of say a statement object. We create the statement object that will handle sending SQL statements to database, to the DB. Yeah, okay. So what else do we need? Well, let's see. let's do something, some raw database queries. Let's do so let's do some selection. Let's do genres. Okay, let's do our genres. Right. Let's get this simple database. So select all from genres. Okay. So I'll do val SQL, of course, right? Well, now I will use something called I'll use triple quotes. Yes, I'll use triple quotes. Why? Because I need because I want to write over multiple lines. So I'll do this. For now, I'll do select all from genres, right? Question is, do I need a semicolon? I don't really technically need, but I'll add it any case, right? Again, so this strips all the extra margin, right? This creates the statement, right? So we will send this statement, right? On let's see what we have, what we get, right? So how do we send the statement? Well, we use basically execute a query. So you'll have a result set. I'll do okay, result set. Okay, it will be statement, right? And what can we do? We can get result set. We can execute a query, right? Here we go. It should be here. We can do batch. We can do a single query, which is of course string. In this case, it's a single string, right? So that's the simplest way of working, right? Let's get some metadata, right? We can get val meta, right? Metadata equals result set, right? This is indeed it is a result set, right? Data type object, and of course dot get metadata. Why not? Why not? Right? And we can print some metadata. Let's say print line. We have, for example, we have received. Let's see something. Let's say meta. What do we have there? Actually, sorry, metadata. Set metadata on to string. Get scale. Get column count. Let's see how many columns we have. Right? Column label. We can get also column names by index. So let's say column count. Right? Because we don't know how many columns we have. Right? So on columns. All right. What else can we do? Let's run this first. Okay, so first of all, we have connection, right? Again, I will actually generally, you want to close it, right? I will see generally, again, generally you do want to close the database connection, right? I mean, our application, it would close here anyways, right? Because we close the application, but it's still safer. It is, but still safer to explicitly close it. Then you do not need the connection anymore, right? So we'll do this. So we'll do also con close, right? Yeah, we have that as well. So method as well. Okay, so we have select from genres, right? Just a simple raw SQL, right? I mean, we just enter it. We execute the query. We have some results. And we have some metadata for now. Let's see if this is our first big test. See if we actually have some data. If we have basically if this gives us 2, right? Because we do have 2 columns, right? Genre ID and name, right? And we'll see how to go about getting that, right? So let's see. And maybe we'll have we'll also probably need to get the table names, right? So right. So let's see. Let's run this. First big test. Okay, we have 2 columns. That's a good news. That's good news. Okay, so what else can we get from our metadata? What else can we extract from our metadata? We have first column. Okay, so let's go through. Can we go through column count? Right. So let's do this. For let's see. E, right, and 1, yeah, 2 metadata, get column count, right, metadata, get column count, right, and we can print column, print line, column name, you know, column, right, sorry, I is named metadata, I believe, or column name. Oh yeah, metadata. Get column name. And let's see, of course, I need a $sign here, of course, right? $sign, metadata, get column name, I, right? So this guarantees that we are not gonna overrun, no. Okay, so let's do that. So a little for loop, right? So this includes, right? Remember one include. So a little notice. So column. So since so column indexes start at 1, not the usual 0, right? So that's again something to mention, right? Okay, let's see if this works again. Again, I've done this before, but yes, perfect. Genre ID and name, right? We can in fact get the also this column, this name, right? It comes from. We can also get the table. This column, we can do this column comes column comes from table. Again, in this case, it's kind of silly because we have a single table, but maybe we had a join, right? So maybe we could use this to get some more information on metadata. So about or get table name for this column, right? So where it came from, right? So we'll do, of course, it should be, in this case, it's same, right? Right, so, and it is, this would be important if we are using joins, right? But of course, here it will be genre and genre, right? So let's see that, let's run this again. Perfect. Genres. Okay, so genre ID comes from table genres. Column name, genre. Okay, so can we do? Since I am feeling really dangerous, can we do? Let's see what happens if I do genre. Let's see what happens if I join. Let's see. Let's do something. Artists with let's do join artists with albums, right? Of course, I could do tracks. It will have a lot of columns, right? I don't have, so maybe let's do this one. All artists and albums. Let's do that. So let's remember that. Let's do this. I will comment this. Control D, right? So of course we are going to override this. All right, I'm going to comment this out for now. Right, and let's try something a little bit crazier, right? So select all from artists. And unfortunately, we have to do the query by hand here because there's no assistance in this. There might be some way in some tools, some plugins which help you do with SQL queries in IntelliJ, but you have to basically, that's why usually you do use some library, but again, so it's a little bit hard to write, but it's a good practice for learning SQL, of course, as well, right? So select all from artists, join albums, right? Or it's, well, doesn't matter which one we will start, right? On, right? On, again, artists, artist ID. Now let's see what happens. Equals albums artist ID. Is that correct? Let's check. Yeah, artist ID, artist ID. Okay, right? So, on we'll get everything, right? Let's see what happens here. Will this work? Will we have a bad query? Right, we'll only find out when we run the query, right? Of course, we could test it in some other tool first. Okay, it worked perfectly. Look at this, right? Artists, artists, albums, 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 right? So it worked perfectly, right? We connected, we did the join, everything worked. We see also artist ID, which table it comes from, right? You have two tables, right? All the metadata is working perfectly. Okay, so pretty good start, right? A pretty good start. And let's see now about actually getting some. We probably want to get some data out from or see the actual columns, right? So I guess we could do maybe one more SQL query, right? And we could of course do a make this a function, of course, as well, right? You can move again as we proceed. You'll probably want to make some utility functions, some methods to deal with these queries, right? So, but for now, we would like to read all the artists and also get so to we can get the so we can get we printed all of these column names, right? We probably want to yield this into a column name library, right? Right? So let's do that. Let's do list of columns, right? So unfortunately, right, well, this will be a slightly more difficult because we need, of course, also the table where it comes from. So I will revert back for now, right? I'll go back to this one, right? Since our example, to simplify our starting example, right? Let's run it again, right? For genres, right? Okay, we only have two tables, so this will be easier, right? So let's make first let's print it, right? So we'll print each result. So remember, we have a result set, right? So let's see, can we do actually? Let's do this print line result set on first. Can you do first? Right? No, first no. Get what? We need get next, I think. Result next, I believe next. Yeah, next. And actually it will advance. We need to actually get yeah, then we use get something and we can actually get the values, right? So we are basically, the way it works, this result set, it's like again, think of it as a buffer. Again, remember why it's so done. You don't get all the data. You don't have an array yet, right? You have to go through and you actually have to keep going until you finish building your results. Because usually, again, you may have maybe made a bad query, maybe you have too many rows, right? So in your results set, so you only get them on demand. Basically, you want to advance one at a time. Actually, there might be a way of getting them all. Let's see, get array. I think you can do this column index. I think that might be actually what you get, an array of single values. That might be interesting actually to get. But usually you use get next, one by one. I don't think there's so many methods here. I don't think you can get. Maybe there's get everything, right? To string, probably not what you want, right? So typically, right? You can even get SQL XML. Oh, that's also possible, right? Get row. We can get a row, right? Particular row actually, right? But again, we usually do it to get the next, right? So we get something, right? While there's something to get, right? And then we can get the actual results. Okay, so let's see this. Okay, so let's see. So while, so we'll do this to loop. So while result set next, like this. So it's a while loop, and then we'll see alternatives. So this is very typical, right? And we do something. So we loop over all rows until results are exhausted, right? Okay, let's see. So print line, so this means we get print line result set get, and we can do basically get index, I believe. Get by, right? We can get an integer, right? And we can get, so we could do this. First one is what? It is genre ID. So we'll do get integer, right? And we could do this, right? We can do basically get integer one, right? On result set, right? Get string 2, right? Yeah, okay, so let's start with the simplest one, right? So we loop and we should be able to print these tuples. Let's see what happens, right? Yes, so we have nice little tuples, right? We printed them as tuples, one rock, one jazz, and so on and so on and so on. So we printed everything. So alternatively, right? Alternative would be to use not index, but use the names, right? And we know them already here, right? We know them here. One is genre ID, right? Right, sorry, okay. And also the second one is name, right? Not index, but string. Okay, so that's the alternative. If we know column names, right? So this will also, so this of course you can mix it up, right? You can mix up the order, of course, right? Let's try it. See, it should work as well. So there's only one thing you have to know is the data types, right? So rap folk, yeah, we have our rap folk from our previous exercise, right? We have opera, we have everything, right? We have bossa nova, we have reggae, we have rock. So again, so two ways of getting the results, either by index, 1, 2. Of course, we have to know how many rows we have, right? So we don't have get out of index error, right? But again, we can check it because we now get column count. So we know we're not going to overwrite, right? We can always now use this to go through all the columns, right? So we could write it actually. We could also go over columns. We could, of course, do this for I again equals 1 to metadata. Oh, sorry, to metadata get column count, right? And basically print current row, right? Result set. So print columns 1 by 1. So print. I'll do print basically. Print, right? Since I don't want to print just print line, print result set. And the only problem is now there is a slight problem. We don't know, since this is very generic, we don't have the data types, right? Can we get string always? I think so, right? Because I think, let's see if this works, right? Because, I mean, we're getting integer here, right? But let's do get string. Will be an error, get string I. Let's see that. And then we'll do this print line, new line, right? Print line, new line. So let's see. And result set plus maybe I'll just do this, right? Okay. So let's see what happens. Will this work or not? Because we have an integer, right? This is like generic. We could try generic. So this is attempt. If we don't, we could simply loop over all columns, right? As well, right? For that row. Okay. So let's see if we get any information here. Will be an error? No. Get string. Actually, it did work correctly. You see, it worked perfectly, right? So again, so this also worked, right? So this works. So get string always. So get string. So get string works even on integers, right? And probably on floats as well, right? So let's see how well it works. Okay, so now that we have all of this in place, will this work? Will we break? Will this code break if we do it on tracks? And the thing is, we probably print all the songs. It's 5,000 songs we have in the database, right? So I'll do limit. Right? So let's do this, right? Control D, right? Again, I'm lazy, right? Or queries. So we'll do this. Let's see how much time we have. We are doing pretty good. 35 minutes. So I'll do select all from tracks, but I'll limit maybe 50. We limit 50 or limit 20, right? No need to complicate again. Limit 20 on. Now let's see if this code still works, right? Let's see if everything works as before. Will this universal? Okay, of course this won't work anymore, right? Because we don't know genre ID, and this is not this is only specific, right? Right? If you know specific names, so this should work. This also should work, right? Because this is we get string, get integer. Well, this should work because almost always this is track ID. Yeah, first is usually first column is generally primary key, which is usually integer representable. So, but let's see if this universal way of getting our columns will get out. This will be a big test. And it actually did work perfectly. Problem child, ACDC, right? We have oral data again. So even floats, right? Even doubles, right? We can get everything as string, right? So everything works, right? We have all our database access for selecting, right? So, right, we have all the data. So, of course, if you know the column names, you can actually do the you can do it like directly. Okay, so we know how to print it, okay, in generic way, but of course, when we're working with data, we'll probably want to move them to some sort of case class, because that represents very well. It's much more structured. If you just put everything into strings, then we lose this structured data, this type information. So let's make a simple case class for genres. Again, I'll go back to our genres, right? So this is our genres, right? So how would we do this, right? So let's see this, right? Let's do it again. Yeah, okay, everything works, right? And let's make a case class. So what would be in a case class? Well, we need to, of course, see, okay, it's easy, genre ID and name, right? Pretty easy. So I'll call it a genre. So case class. I'll do it here because case class genre, right? And of course I'll call it what? Genre ID, right? ID integer, right? On name string, right? Pretty easy, right? Nothing much to be needed, but that's much better than having it in a task. We need some way of storing it, right? So how would we store it, right? So we'll use a specific. So question is now, can we do it? Can we loop again? What do you think? Can we loop again? Well, the result set will be exhausted, so we won't. So we need to make a new query, right? So this would only work once, right? So for each row, right? So let's save it here. So let's use the same loop, right? Otherwise, we know here our result set is exhausted, right? There might be a way. There might be a command. There might be a command to reset, but not always, right? Not all the systems will have it. Maybe a command to reset back to beginning, but I don't. Usually, it's not usually. Sometimes there might be a command to reset, but I don't think there is one for SQLite for this particular driver. I don't think so. Okay, so but you have to make a new query. You would make a new query, right? So we need to save some persistence. So we want to save them into our application. So how would we do that? Well, let's make it here, right? We know we have this information, right? So we just need to, we can use this, right? So we'll need some sort of storage, right? We'll need some buffer, so we'll call it my, array buffer, or genre buffer, or I'll call it a genre buffer, right? Something we're gonna build up, array buffer, right? Buffer, and I'll do how was it? I think it was like this. Yeah, like this. Yeah, I think so. I mean, it collect, of course. Yeah. Come on. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So empty. So we need. So we start with an empty buffer to store our rows, right? So it will be a buffer of genres, right? So we'll basically use it here, right? So adding to our buffer. So what we will use? We can use a plus equal, right? So a new genre, right? We can do it, I'll just do right basically this, right? Genre buffer. We can do plus equal, right? So genre buffer, right? And well, let's make a new one. So while genre, right? Oh, sorry, what's happening here? So Control Z. So genre equals genre, right? And let's see result set, get integer, right? Get integer for genre ID, right? Again, so here we do need integer, right? Because we said the genre has a integer type. So again, we have a stronger, right? We preserve the original, well, we preserve as much as possible of original type information. And also we have result set, all right? Get string name, I believe, right? Again, so we have we don't have anybody telling us what it is, right? We have to know what we are getting, right? So we have a genre, right? So this is what type of new genre, right? So we will add it basically. We could use basically genre buffer plus equal genre, right? And then we can of course do this or collection, right? We have a connection closed, that everything's good, right? And we can here do this here. We can have our genre collection, and we can do our buffer. We can start doing things again. So our genre buffer, to array, of course, right? To array, right? All right, and then we can do, collection. Oh, I can't spell, right? And we can do basically take, collection, take 5, right? And print line for each print line, for each print line. Let's see. Okay, let's see if this whole thing works. Okay, so let's see if this whole thing works. So okay, yeah, it worked perfectly. So what did we do, right? So we, when going our result set, right, we went there to one by one, and we converted each row of data. Since we know the IDs, right, we know the data types, what we need, right, we got them directly. We create a new object, right, or new case class using our case class template, right, or here our tiny little case class template, and we added these data points into our application's memory as an object of type genre, and then add to the buffer. Also, you could use alternative. We could use this, right? We could use genre buffer append, if you remember. This is also same as above, same as previous line, right? We could use this as well, right? Append. I like this syntax better, slightly, right? Same as previous line, right? No, this is same, right? You can use this syntax as well, right? But okay, so 1 second, right? So we will be able to end this on a positive note. So let's see. So we learned, what did we learn today? So we learned how to install our SQL driver. We learned how to create a connection, right? Having right path, how to make a simple query, and how to read some metadata out of these column data, and then we learn how to actually extract some data and even add it to our little case class for further processing. So then later on, of course, we'll see how to improve on these early results. Thank you, and let's continue in our next exercise.